In a green hill in the Canaan region lived the prophet Jacob with his family from his marriage. The prophet Jacob was blessed with 12 sons. Among them, there was a very special child. The child was named Yusuf. Yusuf was not only handsome, he also had a pure heart and noble morals. The prophet Jacob loved Yusuf with all his heart, especially after Yusuf's mother Rachel died, but the great love for Yusuf caused envy in the hearts of his other brothers. It made them slowly harbor hatred for Yusuf one night when darkness enveloped the village. Yusuf, who was still young, suddenly woke up from his sleep. It turned out he had a dream in his dream. Yusuf saw something extraordinary. He saw 11 stars, a sun and a moon, all prostrating themselves to him. The dream was so clear and confusing that Yusuf immediately ran to meet his father. He told what he had experienced his father earlier. "I dreamed of seeing 11 stars, one sun and one moon, all prostrating themselves to me," said Yusuf, with sparkling eyes full of curiosity. The prophet Jacob listened carefully, but soon his face turned very serious. His face showed worry, although a gentle smile did not leave his lips. "Oh, my son, do not tell this dream to your brothers. I am afraid they will be jealous and then plan something bad for you. Remember, Yusuf, Allah has chosen you for something very big." Yusuf nodded obediently. Although he did not understand the meaning of his father's words, but his curiosity continued in his mind. Meanwhile, his other brothers began to feel injustice. They saw how their father seemed to pay more attention to Yusuf and also to Bunyamin, Yusuf's younger brother, who he also loved very much. While watching this video, take the time to write your wishes and prayers in the comments column so that we can say Amen together. Hopefully Allah will soon grant it. Amen. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Day after day passed, month after month, and year after year. The envy in the hearts of Yusuf's brothers increased, until one day they gathered in a place far from his house. One of Yusuf's brothers said in a voice full of anger, "Oh, my brothers, did you see Yusuf and his brothers more loved by our father, more than all of us? Even though we are a strong and large group, why does father love them more?" This is really unfair. Hearing that, his other brothers nodded in agreement. They felt forgotten by their father and they were jealous. Then the jealousy turned into burning hatred. In the middle of an emotional conversation, one of them suggested something terrible: kill Yusuf or throw him somewhere far away, so that our father's attention would only be focused on us. Hearing that, one of them, who had a softer heart, was Yehuda. He said in a calm tone, "Let's not kill Yusuf. Let's just throw him into the well. Then let the people who pass by find him. At least we don't have to bear the sin of murder." Yehuda's suggestion was greeted with nods from his other brothers. Their faces changed to full of determination, as if they were ready to carry out the plan. The atmosphere around them became increasingly tense, along with the evil decision they had made the next day. They returned home with faces full of deceit. They approached their father with forced smiles, as if they were loving children. "Father, let Yusuf go with us tomorrow," said one of them in a full tone. "Our persuasion wanted him to have fun playing with us. We will take very good care of him, Father." But the prophet Jacob, with his sharp intuition, felt anxious. His heart whispered that something was really not right. "It is sad for me if you take Yusuf away. I am afraid Yusuf will be eaten by wolves while you are playing carelessly," replied Prophet Jacob in a tone full of worry. Yusuf's brothers immediately tried to calm their father. They assured his father with sweet words designed to calm down Prophet Jacob's anxiety. "Father, if the wolves eat him while we are a strong group, then we are really at a great loss. We promise Father Yusuf will be fine," they said in a tone that was made to seem as if they really cared after much talk. And coaxing Prophet Jacob reluctantly allowed them to take Yusuf that night before going to bed. Prophet Jacob hugged Yusuf very tightly. "Yusuf, remember, whatever happens, Allah is always with you," said Prophet Jacob softly. While tears dripped down his cheeks, he prayed with all his heart that Allah would protect his beloved son. The next morning, Yusuf innocently followed his brothers towards the desert far from home with a cheerful heart. He was unaware of his brother's evil plans. When they arrived at a quiet and isolated place, the atmosphere suddenly changed. The faces that were previously full of love, now changed, became a face full of hatred. Suddenly, they caught Yusuf. Very roughly, Yusuf's face showed confusion and fear. "My brothers, what are you doing?" said Yusuf with a trembling voice. But they ignored Yusuf's voice. They cursed, beat, and finally they tied Yusuf with a rope before finally dragging him towards a deep well. Yusuf tried to struggle, begging for mercy. "My brothers, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? I am innocent." But his brothers have lost their compassion in their hearts. Mercilessly, they lowered Yusuf into the well, when Yusuf then tried to hold the edge of the well to save himself. They slapped Yusuf's hand until he fell into the cold and dark water. "Leave him here. Let fate decide," it said one of them indifferently at the bottom of the dark well. Yusuf felt the cold water that wet his body and the darkness that enveloped him. But in the midst of that darkness, Yusuf did not lose hope. He remembered his father's prayer, and especially he remembered Allah Almighty. "O Allah, only to you I surrender," said Yusuf in his heart. With the belief that Allah will help him, the night came. Yusuf's brothers returned home full of lies. They brought Yusuf's clothes covered in fake blood. They tried to convince their father that Yusuf had been eaten by a wolf. With their fake tears, they said, "Oh, my father, we were racing. We left Yusuf near our belongings." Then suddenly Yusuf was eaten by a wolf. The Prophet Jacob took Yusuf's clothes and looked at them carefully. He immediately realized that it was a lie. Yusuf's clothes were still intact. There were no traces of tears that should have happened if the wolf had attacked him. With great sadness, the Prophet Jacob said, "Actually, what you did has broken my heart, but I will be patient with beautiful patience. May Allah return Yusuf to me." Meanwhile, in the well, Yusuf waited for his destiny. A destiny that he did not know would take him from darkness to light, from the well to the palace, and from betrayal to forgiveness. A journey full of trials, but also full of miracles and the greatness of Allah. In the middle of the silent night, a caravan of merchants from Madian was on its way to Egypt. When they arrived near the well, they stopped to get water. One of them lowered a bucket into the well. In the well, and how surprised they were when they found a boy holding the bucket rope. "Look at this boy. How lucky we are," said the trader with great joy. Then they immediately, pulling Yusuf out of the well and taking him with them. Yusuf, who was still scared and confused, could only surrender. Yusuf was then taken to Egypt, taken by a trading caravan who did not realize that the boy they found was someone who would later bring great change to Egypt and the surrounding areas. When they arrived in Egypt, they immediately went to the market to sell Yusuf as a slave in a crowded and bustling market. Yusuf stood among the other slaves. His body was weak because of the long journey, and his heart was full of longing for his family that day. An Egyptian nobleman named Al-Aziz, who had power over the state treasury, he was walking in the market. His sharp eyes immediately captured Yusuf's figure. Yusuf's handsome and calm face, even though in his position as a slave, attracted Al-Aziz's attention, he felt there was something special in the young man. "How much is this slave?" Al-Aziz asked the slave trader. The trader saw Al-Aziz's interest. He answered quickly, "Sir, for a slave as handsome and attractive. The price is not cheap, sir, but we are willing to sell him at a fair price for you without hesitation." Al-Aziz paid the asking price and took Yusuf to his house. In his magnificent house, Al-Aziz treated Yusuf not as a slave, but more as a member of his family. "I will make this child a servant in our house. He seems to have great potential," said Al-Aziz to his wife. It turned out that Al-Aziz's wife, who was known for her beauty, was also immediately fascinated by Yusuf's handsomeness in her heart. She felt happy because there would be someone who could please her eyes every day. Yusuf, who was still young, was now in a new environment far from his home and family, but he still maintained his faith in Al-Aziz's house. Yusuf grew into a smart, wise man. and still held fast to his faith. Allah gave him the ability to interpret dreams and also taught him the best way to manage the affairs of the days past, and Yusuf was increasingly appreciated in Al-Aziz's house. His honest personality and noble morals made him liked by everyone in the house, but behind all the goodness he received, a great trial was waiting for Yusuf. Al-Aziz's wife turned out to be increasingly fascinated by Yusuf's handsomeness and morals. She began to harbor feelings of unnatural love in her heart. She felt tempted every time she saw Yusuf, and those feelings grew. The longer, it was harder to hold it in, until one day when the house was quiet, there was only Yusuf and Al-Aziz's wife in it. The woman decided to express her feelings with graceful steps. She approached Yusuf, who was working. "Yusuf, come here. I want to talk to you," she called in a soft and seductive voice. Yusuf did not realize the hidden meaning behind those words, because all this time Yusuf considered Al-Aziz's wife to be his own mother. Yusuf approached politely. "What can I do for you, my lady?" said Yusuf in a soft voice. The woman smiled and got closer to Yusuf. "Yusuf, don't you see how much I want you? Do you know, Yusuf, I can give you everything more than you ever imagined?" Hearing those words, Yusuf was shocked. He immediately realized what was happening. With a firm but respectful voice, Yusuf said, "I seek refuge in Allah. How could I do this to my master? And more than that, I fear Allah." But Al-Aziz's wife did not give up so easily. The feelings she had kept for so long had reached their peak. Yusuf would not be known to anyone. "What we do in this house, I can make you more than just a servant in this house, Yusuf. You can have everything. I can give you what you ask for," Yusuf said Al-Aziz's wife passionately. But Yusuf remained firm in his heart. He knew that loyalty to Allah was the most important thing. The most important thing in human life is more than all worldly temptations. "My lady, I can't do it. God sees everything, even though humans don't see what we do, and I don't want to betray the trust that has been given to me." Feeling increasingly cornered, Al-Aziz's wife became bolder. She tried to hold Yusuf's hand, but Yusuf quickly pulled away. He tried to escape from the room in panic. The woman chased Yusuf, trying to hold him back. But when Yusuf reached the door, the woman pulled Yusuf's shirt from behind very hard until the shirt was torn. At that moment, the door opened, and Al-Aziz, the husband of the woman, he stood in the middle of the door. Al-Aziz's face showed surprise. He couldn't believe what he saw with his own two eyes, full of guilt and fear of being caught. Al-Aziz's wife immediately tried to defend herself. "My husband, what is the reward for someone who intends to do bad things to your wife other than prison or painful torture?" Those words contained strong accusations. He tried to clean his hands from his mistakes. He hoped to save himself from the shame that threatened him. Innocent. Yusuf tried to explain the real incident. "Oh, my lord, he who tried to tempt me," said Yusuf with a calm but full voice belief, seeing the confusion on her husband's face. A witness from their family gave advice. Check Yusuf's clothes. He said, if the clothes were torn in the front, then this woman was telling the truth, and Yusuf was the one who was guilty. But if Yusuf's clothes were torn in the back, then Yusuf was right, and this woman was lying. Hearing that, Al-Aziz immediately checked Yusuf's clothes. He found that Yusuf's clothes were torn in the back. He immediately realized the real truth with a soft tone. But full of disappointment, Al-Aziz reprimanded his wife. "Oh, woman, this is really your trick. Really, the trickery of women is very big." But even though the truth was revealed, Al-Aziz chose to suppress this scandal. He did not want to embarrass his family in public. Al-Aziz then said, "Yusuf, forget this incident. Do not talk to anyone about it, and you, "O my wife, ask forgiveness for your sins, because you are one of the guilty people," even though the order seemed to solve the problem. But gossip about this incident immediately spread throughout the city. The women, the wives of officials, they began to gossip, talking about Al-Aziz's wife. How could Al-Aziz's wife be crazy about her own slave? Al-Aziz's wife seduces her maid to submit herself. Really, her love for his servant is very big. We see he is in a real error. The gossip listener. Al-Aziz's wife felt offended. She wanted to show the women how special Yusuf was, so she was tempted. Then she decided to invite them to her house. She prepared a luxurious banquet after they ate. She gave them fruits and knives to peel them. When they were cutting the fruit, she called Yusuf to come out and meet the guests when Yusuf entered the room. The women were silent. They were fascinated by Yusuf's extraordinary handsomeness. Yusuf's face was so radiant, and his morals radiated through his polite movements unknowingly. The women cut their own hands with the knives they were holding until blood dripped without them realizing it. "Glory be to Allah! This is not a human. This must be a noble angel," they said with uncontrollable admiration. Seeing their reactions, Al-Aziz's wife felt satisfied. She smiled and said, "This is the person you are criticizing. Me, because he is right. I have tried to seduce him, but he refused. And if he does not do what I ordered, he will definitely be imprisoned and become a despicable person." Yusuf, who faced such great pressure, he remained steadfast in his principles. He knew that it was better imprisoned instead of sinning. In his sincere prayer, Yusuf asked Allah, "O Allah, for more prison, prefer than to fulfill their invitation. And if you do not protect me from their deceit, then I will tend to fulfill their desires. And I am among the foolish ones. Allah the All-Hearer." He answered Yusuf's prayer and protected him from the temptations of the women to calm the gossip that was spreading and to protect the honor of his family. Al-Aziz finally decided to imprison Yusuf, even though he knew Yusuf was innocent. Yusuf was finally thrown into prison without any clarity about when he would be released. But even though he was imprisoned, Yusuf never lost his faith in Allah. He accepted the decision with patience, convinced that everything that happened was part of Allah's great plan in prison. Yusuf met two other prisoners. They were servants of the king who had fallen into misfortune. One of them was the king's cupbearer, the other was the baker one night. Each of them had a strange dream that confused them in the morning. They came to Yusuf and told him their dreams. They hoped Yusuf could explain them. The first servant said, "O Yusuf, I dreamed that I was pressing grapes to make wine," while the second said, "I dreamed I was carrying bread on my head and the birds ate the bread." Yusuf, who was known as a wise man and had the ability to interpret dreams, he answered them calmly, "No food will come to you two except I will tell you the meaning of your dreams before the food reaches you." Yusuf calmed their worries. Then Yusuf began to interpret their dreams. He said to the first servant, "O my prison friend, you will return to your master, and you will continue your work as cupbearer. You will serve wine to the king." But to the servant, who the second Joseph said in a more serious tone, "As for you, my friend, you will be crucified, you will be punished, and the birds will eat part of your head. This is a decision that cannot be changed." The listener of the interpretation of the second servant was very surprised, but they knew that Joseph had never made a mistake in interpreting a dream. Before they left Yusuf, Joseph asked the first servant, "When you return to your master, remember me and tell him about my situation here. Maybe he will free me." The servant then promised to remember Joseph, but after he was released and returned to life in the palace full of luxury, he forgot his promise. Yusuf remained in prison for several more years, but he remained patient and he believed that God had a better plan for him. Time continued to pass. One night, the king of Egypt had a dream that disturbed him very much. In his dream, he saw 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 skinny cows. He also saw 7 green ears of wheat and 7 other ears that were dry and wilted. This dream made the king very restless. Then he called all the fortune-tellers, and called the wise men to interpret his dream. But none of them could give a satisfactory answer to the king. They only said that the dream was just a chaotic dream and had no meaning in the midst of the confusion of the palace residents. The servant who had been imprisoned with Yusuf suddenly remembered Yusuf and his expertise in interpreting dreams. He immediately met the king. He then said, "O my king, I know a young man who is very good at interpreting dreams. Let me go see him, and he will definitely be able to give the correct explanation of my lord's dream." The very curious king immediately allowed it. The servant immediately went to prison. He met Yusuf in a hopeful tone, said, "O Yusuf, O honest person, give us an explanation about the 7 fat cows that were eaten by 7 thin cows, and also about the 7 green ears of wheat and the 7 dry ears of wheat." The king was very anxious. "O Yusuf," he needed your answer even though he had been forgotten for years. Yusuf never complained. Yusuf sincerely gave an interpretation without asking for anything in return or putting forward conditions for release. He explained patiently, "My brothers, you will plant for 7 consecutive years and leave whatever you harvest in the grain except for the little that you eat. Then after that, there will come 7 years of hard times, which will use up what you have saved for that time, except a little of what you have saved. After that, a year will come when people will get rain, and they will press the wine." The servant returned to the palace. He conveyed the interpretation of Yusuf to the kings, was very impressed with Yusuf's wisdom. He immediately ordered that Yusuf be released from prison and ordered that Yusuf be brought before him. But what was surprising was that Yusuf refused to be released before his name was cleared of false accusations that had thrown him into prison. When the king's messenger came to free him, Yusuf said, "Go back to your master and ask him about ladies who cut off their hands. Indeed, my lord knows their tricks." The curious king called the women and asked them what happened when you seduced Yusuf. The women, because they were facing the king, they realized that they could no longer lie. They admitted the truth. They then said, "Glory be to Allah. We do not know a single mistake from Yusuf." Hearing that answer, Al-Aziz's wife then said, "Now the truth is clear. I was the one who seduced Yusuf, and he is a truthful person." With this confession, the king knew that Yusuf was innocent. He immediately ordered Yusuf's release. After Yusuf was released, the king said to him, "O Yusuf, today you have become a strong and trustworthy person in front of me." After that, Yusuf asked to be appointed as the manager of the state treasury. He said, "Make me the state treasurer, because I am a person who is good at guarding, and I am a knowledgeable person." The king appointed Yusuf as the ruler of the entire Egyptian treasury. With his wisdom and knowledge, Yusuf led the country through times of abundance and times of famine faced by the entire region of Egypt and its surroundings. When times of famine arrived, people from various countries came to Egypt to seek help. Among them were Yusuf's brothers. They came from Canaan to buy wheat. When they arrived, Yusuf immediately recognized them, but they did not recognize Yusuf. Yusuf hid his identity and spoke to them in a way that made them not realize that he was their brother whom they had banished years before. Seeing his brothers, Yusuf then set a strategy. Yusuf accused them of being spies and ordered them to bring their younger brother named Benjamin. If they wanted to get more wheat, Yusuf's brothers were surprised, but they agreed to bring Benjamin on their next visit as a form of appreciation. Yusuf gave them more wheat than they bought. He hid their merchandise in their sacks as a surprise. When they returned home, they found their merchandise had been returned. They urged their father, the Prophet Yaqub, to allow them to bring Benjamin. After much consideration, Yaqub finally allowed them, but with a condition that they must swear to protect Benjamin and will bring him back safely on his next visit to Egypt. Yusuf welcomed them with the same hospitality. But after they were ready to return to Canaan, Joseph ordered the royal cup. The precious things were hidden in Benjamin's sack when the cup was found. Benjamin was accused of stealing, and then he was detained. His brothers were very shocked. They begged for Benjamin to be released, but Yusuf refused. After they felt there was no hope, they returned to their father with a heavy heart. They told him about what had happened to Benjamin. Jacob, who had lost Yusuf many years before, now felt hopeless after losing Benjamin. With very deep sadness, Jacob could only pray to Allah with beautiful patience. He hoped that Allah would return his children to him. But behind all this, Yusuf had prepared a big surprise for his brothers on their last journey to Egypt. Yusuf revealed his true identity to his brothers. They were shocked. They felt very sorry for their actions in the past. However, Yusuf, with his generosity, was able to forgive them and asked them to take their father to Egypt so that their family could be reunited. When this news reached Jacob, he was so happy that his eyesight, which had faded, was restored after many years of separation. The Prophet Jacob's family was finally reunited in Egypt with Yusuf standing before them, becoming the ruler of a prosperous country. Yusuf, which is full of tests of patience and wisdom, is a very valuable lesson for every human being about faith, piety, and steadfastness in facing life's trials. This story teaches us that with strong faith, we will always find a way out of every difficulty, and that patience and sincerity in undergoing Allah's destiny will bring us to unexpected goodness. Wallahu Adam Bishawab.